Solder or solder, doesn't matter how you say it, as long as you do it right for filigree. Welcome to one of our videos related to making traditional Turkish filigree. If you're not familiar, filigree is an ancient form of metalwork using a variety of types of wires, usually silver or gold, soldered together into different wearable and sculptural forms. Now, if you're interested in doing filigree, to the best of my knowledge, commercially produced solder is not available in the United States. And so bear with me in this video because it is a pretty labor intensive process and not the most fun, but you'll definitely be glad to have it and be able to do filigree for yourself. So here we go. So to start, you're going to want to lay down a clean, large white sheet of paper. And on top of that, you're going to have a coarse file dedicated to just doing this for filigree. And you're going to have sheet easy solder. So only use easy solder for making the general solder that you're going to use for filigree. I would recommend clamping that sheet solder at least folded over so you have at least 2 layers in a ring clamp. And then also I would dedicate a small brush to this process. In this case, it's just a cheap toothbrush that I found to use really well. And so you'll see how this process goes. So in order to make the powdered solder, the best process that I found is just rubbing that sheet solder against the coarse file. So you'll see here that it's just grinding it down to solder dust and then brushing the solder dust out of that file, collecting it on the paper, making sure that it doesn't get ground into the back of the file. So I usually brush it out of the way and then just keep going until you've made enough solder dust that we will then be mixing in with the borax. Now, once you've ground all of your sheet solder down into dust, I would recommend transferring it to a clean tray. I like these really small triangular metal stone sorting trays. It just enables pouring the powder into containers to be nicely controlled. Now, if you're thinking that, why don't I just get solder chips and mix that in? Unfortunately, those solder chips are actually too large for this process, and I have not found an efficient way to grind the solder chips down, so this is, for better or for worse, the best process that I've found. So through this process, you are going to end up with some slight sort of like strips and burrs that come off of the strip solder while you're filing it. So that'll be necessary to be sorted out because, again, those will be 2 large pieces of solder to be using for filigree. So here you can see I have another one of those gem sorting trays, and it's, again, I haven't found really a better process than this, than to just go through with nice clean tweezers and pick out any of the larger pieces of solder that's come off of the burrs of either the file or the sheet while you're filing it, and just transfer those to a different tray. And of course, you can still use that extra solder for additional soldering operations that you might need to do. But I didn't choose to use any kind of sifter or anything like that because I was just concerned that I would lose a fair amount of the solder dust onto the sifter, and then I have to dedicate a separate sifter for that, try and clean it off. So I think it's just worth the effort to just slow down, get into the process, and just get fussy with getting any of those larger pieces out of your solder dust. Now, when you're ready to mix together your solder dust with your borax, generally what the best ratio is about 4 parts solder dust to 1 part borax. If you don't precisely weigh this out and you add too much borax, it's really going to bubble up too much when you're trying to solder your filigree together. It can disrupt your design, it can move parts, and if you have too much borax in your solder mixture, then you're going to have to start over, and you certainly don't want to do that. So again, you need to be really precise with this, get a really good digital scale, and what I've found to be really useful is with these smaller amounts that I'm mixing up, to not zero out the tray. So you see here that I've weighed that gem sorting tray is 4.9 grams, so I'm not going to zero it out, and then I'm just going to add a very small amount of solder to that, as you'll see. So I've added 0.7 of a gram of the solder dust that I've made here, and then I will be taking a whole separate tray to weigh out the amount of borax. Remember, with the ratio 4 to 1. So here we have 0.7 grams of the solder dust. And here I've added about 0.2 grams of the borax. It is a hair above the ratio, but this was the closest that I could get the scale to sort of function and read at these very small amounts. So again, I would recommend dealing with as large quantities at a time as you could. I think the digital scale will register everything better for you. But this was just for a quick demonstration, and so I believe this will be close enough. And I would strongly recommend having an entirely separate, clean glass jar just for your filigree solder, since it's a unique mixture that's separate from everything else. I know this isn't the most glamorous looking of materials, but once you get into soldering the filigree, you'll be very happy to have spent the time and made your solder mixture correctly so that it'll work really well, and all the effort that you put into making your filigree wires and your designs, it will be that perfect soldering operation, and everything will come together beautifully. So I hope this is useful. Again, I know it's not the most exciting process, but again, to the best of my knowledge, there is not commercially produced solder in this form for filigree available to me in the United States. So good luck with this whole process, and feel free to check out our other videos on filigree and preparing the materials and actually putting it all together. Good luck! If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to hit that subscribe button so that you can hear from me when I post future videos. Thanks for stopping by.